Hello, welcome back to War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. I am Orli Matlow and a comedian in mourning after the Toronto Blue Jays' devastating loss in Game 7 of the World Series in the 11th inning after winning for them. Oh, I'm just getting choked up just thinking about it, but I am here to bravely reach across the aisle, and as part of my anti-war activism, I want to model peaceful coexistence. And so I'm very lucky to have someone currently in Southern California, home of the Los Angeles Dodgers, joining me. He's an exceptional comic who's appeared on Comedy Central, Prime Video, even Kill Tony. So you know the bros. I'm excited to get the bros listening to this one. Please welcome Greg Roque.
Hey, thanks for having me, Orly. And again, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm glad that we can reach across the aisle and hopefully find mutual understanding over, the Dodgers and the Toronto losers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been rough. I say often that like war, like people need to stop treating war like sports because that's what sports are for. But it does have the existential, if you get invested, it does feel like your identity and the whole city is wrapped up into the success of the physical feats of just a couple of guys, which is what war is.
Yeah, I mean, war is much more fun when you're on the hegemon/winning side.
Yeah, right. So as both someone in Dodgers territory and a true red-blooded American.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is like, I felt like Bush and, flying into the aircraft carrier, mission accomplished.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm excited to be here and can't wait to talk about war and film and other stuff, etc.
exactly. You're my most cinephile friend. And by that, I mean you have a subscription to the Criterion channel, which to me is the makings of a true cinephile, and are presumably like busy on Letterboxd, right? Do you have a Letterboxd?
I used to, and then I was tired of writing, 2 paragraph long reviews for like 3 likes. So
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm just gonna keep my thoughts to myself. But yes, I have a subscription to the Criterion channel and Movie and the less popular BFI player because I do love my British film.
Wow, I didn't even know that one existed. So hopefully they'll sponsor this podcast because they need to get in. They need better promo.
Yeah, where else am I gonna watch classic Neil Jordan films?
So yeah, the first question: who is Neil Jordan?
Oh, he's an Irish director. He's made The Crying Game. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. He's also made Mona Lisa.
Interesting.
Okay, well, that's a great way to start the conversation. He also you might know him from he also directed Interview with a Vampire, the Brad Pitt Tom Cruise one.
Okay, that I've heard of. The one where Brad Pitt, doesn't he like kiss like an 11-year-old Kirsten Dunst?
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if that, yeah, ages well. But there's a big question in the film world. There's been multiple YouTube video essays that hopefully autoplay after this one for your convenience about whether or not there is such a thing as an anti-war film. The quote, "There's no such thing as an anti-war film," is attributed to French director Francois Truffaut. He's kind of like the Abraham Lincoln of quotes, though. Like we don't know if he ever actually said it, but he gets the credit. Is there such a thing as an anti-war film, or by virtue of showing us the camaraderie and emphasizing the adventure and getting our hearts pumping, getting the viewer invested in the adrenaline rush that is inflicting violence? Does that glorify violence?
That's such a loaded question that prior to our recording I've been struggling to answer because, well, you can take something that ostensibly is pretty anti-war, like one of my favorite movies by Brian De Palma, Casualties of War, in which Sean Penn, John C. Reilly basically hold this Vietnamese villager as prisoner and torture her, and all of a sudden it was based on a real account. And like the question there is obviously like they center civilians and the brutality of the war machine. But at the same time, is it necessarily a pacifist movie, or is it more sympathetic towards like Vietnamese autonomy and the Viet Cong's fight for resistance? So it's one of those questions where it's again, I can't really answer that. I can say there are movies that are anti-US imperialism and anti unfair, unjust, unpopular wars. But again, like that's so much different than, well, at least what I would assume would be a pacifist film, one that doesn't advocate for any war or violence of any kind.
Yeah, I think centering the victims of war as opposed to the perpetrators is like a good way to make sure it's like ethical consumption under capitalism. But also it's interesting. I think that the remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, I'd qualify that as an anti-war film because it doesn't make it seem like a fun adventure where bands of brothers with your buddies. It like gets to like the boredom of marching for hours on end through fucking Belgium. It's about World War One.
Yeah. No, I've read the book, seen the original 20s one. That's actually one of my favorite war movies, precisely because it is an anti-war movie in the sense that I think like the way you can approximate the closest thing to an anti-war movie is focusing on the losing side and the horrors, because that movie is all about shell shock, returning to home with PTSD, and not only like the actual like physical collateral damages of war, but again the psychological toll it leaves on people who are forced to sort of perpetrate violence for larger institutions and ideologies.
Yeah, and that one did a good job of just showing. I remember towards the end, you have the leaders sitting in the comforts of their fancy ass train car, even after the armistice was signed, sending their troops into battle because like might as well get more kills in, kill some more Frenchmen before the war officially ends at 11 a.m. And like it doesn't get any stupider than that. That's objectively dying for nothing. Like the ceasefire is hours away.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the most poignant quotes about war, I'll never forget, was from Grand Theft Auto 4
Ooh.
when when Nico Bellic said, war is a way for the young and naive to make the old and rich richer."
Wow. How does that fit into the narrative of Grand Theft Auto 4? Is it about weapons manufacturers?
Well, and also essentially Nico Bellic, the protagonist, was a child soldier during the Yugoslav wars,
Oh my God.
and so he heads to Liberty City or New York. If I don't know if they're the exact same city. I'm sure there's some parallels. But anyway, so he's trying to track down um, one person in his group who betrayed his troop and had a lot of them murdered. And the movie, it's kind of like the original Rambo, where it's about how uh, people who perpetrate war and have been fighting in war like can't find peace or any sort of calm. So he arrives to America and works his way up to a petty criminal, but still like can't satiate like the needs for a comfortable life. He's just in this continuous cycle of violence, and no amount of blood, or sorry, no amount of cash can wipe away the blood that follows him.
That's wild. I guess I need to have you back to do a video game episode. War is good for video games.
Yeah, and we could talk about 360 no scoping teens on Call of Duty.
Yeah. Right, like, there's a debate, like, "I'm grateful to live in America, greatest country," but then they'll, like, every time there's a mass shooting, which is at once you're during the weekly mass shooting, the propensity of the media to blame anything but the guns that are doing the killing. So like there's debates on video games whether they're good or bad for humanity. But Grand Theft Auto 4 has some deep wisdom, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a great nihilistic game, and like Grand Theft Auto 5, the one set in Los Santos or Los Angeles, is a little more satirical and like very meta in the sense that it makes fun of video game culture and all this stuff. But Grand Theft Auto 4 is just is a a great story. And there's actually this great movie called Deepan, which is actually very similar to the story of Grand Theft Auto 4, where this guy was a resistance fighter for the Tamil Tigers, moves to the big city, and again, as the trauma of war continues to follow him, he finds himself in a life of crime.
Wow, I'm impressed with like their geopolitical range.
Yeah, no, I believe they came out around the same time. So, and obviously, like the Grand Theft Auto 4 is more only 90s kids will remember
Yeah.
the Yugoslavian wars, whereas this was like Sri Lankan, resistance and everything. But it just goes to show that like these themes of like the battle and the war zone following you back home are salient and obviously, span multi forms of media and texts.
Yes, I remember when the Hurt Locker won Best Picture. That was Jeremy Renner pre getting run over by a snowplow. And the theme of that movie is how hard it is to come home and how he kept like, yeah, his body just craved the adrenaline rush. Like once you're trained for that, it's hard to go back to Walmart.
Yeah, yeah. I was in high school when it came out, and that left an indelible mark on me, the Hurt Locker, and then as I got older, and then you saw like before troops withdrew. Well, so most of the troops were some peacekeeping troops that withdrew from Afghanistan. You had like generations of people who served, like their child would serve alongside like their fathers, and so you have like again, war is again this intergenerational like business and it becomes like a hereditary occupation.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting. And what like when I was researching for the World War II episode, the number of veterans of World War II were like, hey, we didn't fight this righteous war, so then you use it as the pretext to go to Korea 5 years from now. Like we fought this so you wouldn't subject our children to the same thing. But now it's just, yeah, it's a career like any other. You could be a nepo baby for the military.
Like most of our politicians.
Yeah. Another movie I want to talk about is Apocalypse Now. I only saw it for the first time a few years ago, and it does objectively rule, like the whole spectacle. And I think it speaks to like the fact that it shows like, ooh, who's the real savage kind of thing. Like it might not glorify violence, but I did feel guilty because of the use of Wagner when they're flying in those helicopters, and then they're like, oh, why you got to bring the Nazi composer into this?
Actually, again, that I would say that was an anti-war scene because again Apocalypse Now very critical of U.S. imperialism and obviously set in the Vietnam War, but filmed in the Philippines during the Marcos regime. But that scene with the helicopters flying and Rise of the Valkyrie are playing, that was actually an homage to Birth of a Nation,
Shit.
the the classic silent racist historical revisionist film in which the Klansmen, like the Night Riders, are storming a town, and they have the German composer. So I mean, Frankie Coppola, I think he knows a thing or two about movies, and so he no, he clearly was drawing that line of like again, who is the savage? And I mean, Apocalypse Now was loosely based on Heart of Darkness, about like a Belgian imperialism in the Congo, and yeah, so I mean, a movie like that, you know, Francis Ford Coppola is a terrible person and a maniac in real life, but as far as an anti-war film goes, I mean, I don't think you can get much better and real than that. But at the same time, it's also becomes this perennial spectacle of like the
Hmm.
explosion. So I think sometimes, as you watch it as a kid and you're just like, whoa, man, that guy blew up, or that guy came from the swamp. Martin Sheen cut himself with glass because he was drunk. Wow, that's so cool. And then as you get older, you're like, hey, I think a lot of this stuff is kind of feeds into our appetite for the aestheticization of violence and all this stuff. But overall, I mean, I'd still put Apocalypse Now more in the anti-war camp.
What else? As someone who objectively knows a lot of movies, what else can qualify as an anti-war movie? We did text a bit about documentaries. Hearts and Minds,
Yeah,
which is a
yeah.
Criterion selection, is a documentary that brilliant. Was it during the Vietnam War or only afterwards?
Yeah, it was towards the end of the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam War is often referred to as like the first televised war, and that was part of the reason why it was so unpopular, because you'd see footage and then you'd read about like the My Lai massacre and all these other things, and detente, the spread of communism. Like even people were like, hey, maybe we should probably chill out a bit. What do Vietnamese people have to do with us? And so Hearts and Minds is definitely one. I think, obviously documentaries are easier to be anti-war because they a documentary in a sense just shows footage, undramatized footage of, victims of war and attacks and all these things. I guess the question is, when you say like, is there an anti-war film? Like when you bring in the drama and the heightened like mise en scène, like does any sort of spectacle like inherently perpetuate it? I don't know. But hopefully we can get to the bottom of this, or people can leave hateful comments and call me an idiot.
Yeah, that came up in the musical theater episode where Daniel Maté said, like, musical theater can be fascist because it's literally just, yeah, spoon feeding you spectacle and telling you how to feel.
Exactly. Well, like I was someone who had to read Adorno, and Adorno thought everything was fascist. So probably every movie is fascist.
Eh, Oh, but in terms of like the resistance to spectacle, that's why I think the zone of interest was super interesting and well done. I find myself thinking about that movie a lot. I wonder why. But the whole premise of that movie is that it's a Holocaust movie without showing you the Holocaust. It's Rudolf Haas, the commander of Auschwitz, and his family living in the Polish countryside. He was relocated, just got his cottage outside of Auschwitz, going about his daily life with his kids, going swimming, but the odd time some ash from crematoria get in the way.
Yeah, that's easily been one of my favorite films of recent memory. And I'd even say of the 21st century. I think we have the themes. We have themes of the banality of evil, like you mentioned. Like Huss and his family are just chilling in this little villa, as some of the worst human atrocities are being committed. And there are two scenes that really stuck out for me. It was the one where him and his and the Nazi committee are just casually talking about Zyklon B, and it shows how so much of this cruelty was reduced to like just bureaucratic paperwork and red tape. It's like, oh, okay, well, like who should we contract to get this, or like, oh, which valves do you think we should use, and all this. Like, and I think something like that is so, again, that was so powerful, because it's like, again, when you dehumanized a group of people, and just like again strip them of any sense of personhood, that yeah, it does just becomes a like routine administrative like task. It was like I've never seen, like they made, like I've never seen office paperwork that was so evil. you
Yeah.
know and and the other scene was the ending, which I thought was the, probably the most brilliant ending I've seen of any movie, where you have um you have the people, the cleaners, like cleaning up after the Holocaust museum, as it's, again, it just becomes routine that this violence just it kind of, it doesn't, it's absorbed into some larger spectacle, and it becomes the loss of lives and the larger meanings about humanity and rights and all this stuff just again become artifacts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see what Hollywood will do with our current atrocities. So, yeah, we were texting about wanting to talk about, there was a Deadline announcement recently about how there's going to be an exciting new sexy Israeli crime thriller about the beeper attack in Lebanon that was ostensibly for Hezbollah, but when you put bombs in consumer electronics, it can it killed and maimed dozens of children. It is. Have you been hired to write that screenplay?
No, no, no. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because when you said bombs and consumer electronics, I was just thinking of the Cybertruck.
My God, yeah.
um, and we also texted about Amy Schumer
Yes,
producing an October 7th. I believe it's a rom com. If if I'm wrong,
it is.
please
Yes,
correct
it
me again.
was the headline on Kveller.com was like Amy Schumer producing a new like Israeli rom com, and this is some incredible Jewish geography, but it's based on the story of this guy who was injured on October 7th, an Israeli guy who incidentally is whose mom went to school in Toronto with my dad, and my mom's best friends husband's sister's husband's sister is the guy working with Amy Schumer to create the October 7th rom com about an Israeli soldier who then embarks on a speaking tour and like falls in love with his handler. Like, do we think that movie will get made?
Yeah, I honestly have no. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if like an Israeli studio picked it up. I mean, Israel has its own film industry. I don't know if it'll be too hot for Hollywood, because now we're kind of getting like sort of conflicting responses to the Israel Gaza war, and the genocide and all the stuff happening. So I don't know. I if I had the power to greenlight films, my films would have already been made. So that just to show how little power I have. Um, but yeah, I think but seeing this trend of sort of Israel or like Mossad agents or whatever. I mean, it follows the trend we've seen since post 9/11 Hollywood landscape, where it's vilifying Arabs and creating like this, one side is righteous and the other one is. I mean this is an old trope that you can go back to the 40s and seeing all the German and Japanese villains we had, and then the Cold War, obviously it was the Russians, and like it's I guess the war on terror is still the flavor of the month. And so, until we find substantial solutions, or at least something that like again, I don't know what that looks like. So I'm definitely an expert, so forgive me if I sound like I'm talking out of my ass, because I am.
That's the
But I think it's
that's what podcasts are for. We're comedians with microphones. This is what we do.
yeah. Yeah, until we get to the Sino-American wars, and the Chinese become the enemy. Like, well, I think Islamic terrorist groups will always be the easy villain to showcase.
Yeah, I haven't watched the new Catherine Bigelow movie, speaking of the Hurt Locker, but it just came out, and people are saying that it's like to sow the seeds or to like manufacture consent for a nuclear war with China. So we have that to look forward to.
Nice. I will check it out. I haven't seen it, but in my own case of Jewish geography, you said Manufacturing Consent, written by the good Norman Chomsky. Uh, Noam Chomsky, just in case someone doesn't get my dumb humor.
Ex-
But my my father-in-law grew up in Philadelphia, and his school teacher, was Noam Chomsky's mother.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's the leftist. Like if you've ever been to like a DSA meeting or anything, like that could, yeah, that's incredible clout that you're only 3 degrees away.
Yeah, and now I'm like 11 degrees away from the October 7th movie.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting that with regards to like film depictions of Israel Palestine, that the Oscars did give their best documentary to No Other Land, which y- yeah, I thought it was excellent. I saw it. Did you see it yet?
Oh yeah, no, I saw it at my local art theater. I actually saw it unbeknownst to me the night that the one of the directors was kidnapped.
Shit.
And so after the screening, they had some students for Palestinian justice people come and speak, and they said, "Oh, by the way, one of the directors has been kidnapped," or I forget if it was the producer, or well, I'm sure he had multiple roles, but yeah, I was like, wow, that makes this movie even sadder.
Yeah, holy shit. I saw it the night after the 2024 election. I had already had the tickets. So the whole time I was just absolutely devastated and was like, at least I'm not at Suffs, the musical about suffragettes, because that would have been a nightmare to have seen after Kamala lost. But I,
Well, I'm glad that misery likes company and stacks itself.
yeah, yeah, I went all the way uptown. It was only playing at Lincoln Center, and they only just got a. They only after it won the Oscar in March 2025, and they only just released it on streaming because it's still, even with the Oscar cachet, people don't want to tell these stories. So has a movie ever changed your mind about anything? With that movie, I went in, I thought I knew about the occupation, but I didn't know. Just, yeah, there are scenes in there like the schools being bulldozed, the wells being filled with concrete. Like, have you ever seen a movie that made you think like, oh, I have a different opinion of this issue now than I did 3 hours ago?
Well, naturally, my sympathies are with, Palestinian people. I like, so I I had like back in my undergrad days, I was involved with Students for Palestinian Justice. And so, I've heard about a lot of these stuff going on, and we've seen footage and everything. So I wouldn't say it really, changed the way I felt regarding my position on the plight of the Palestinians. But I mean, it's just it 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 compounds and it reinforces the harrowing, like, travesty that informs sort of my political decision, or at least my political opinions on the matter.
Yeah, it's interesting because like movies that change hearts and minds, no pun intended, like seldom ever get made because like the same people funding the movies are invested in not changing hearts and minds.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'd say, like, Triumph of the Will changed my mind only insofar as I was like, oh wow, Nazis can actually make really good
Yeah.
art.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, oh yeah, women directors. They
Oh yeah, I was like, well, yeah, Hitler sucked at art, but Leni Riefenstahl, oh man, she was great.
Yeah, I haven't.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was about to say I'm the Nazi cinematic universe. I'm unfamiliar. I only saw Triumph of the Will. We watched it in school, in middle school, as part of being like, yeah, this,
Or, so you still have to catch up on the NCU.
yeah, yeah. What else?
Yeah, well, Olympia was the other one Leni Riefenstahl did, was about the 36 Olympics. And again, that's like the modern like sports documentary. But I will say, I know I'm joking about that Austrian art school reject, but for every triumph of the will, which has again permeated and embedded its visual DNA into all movies. I know recently on Instagram you posted something about a Star War. Well, the that ceremony where Han Solo and all of them are getting the medals, that's directly lifted from Triumph of the Will. Like again, that's another visual reference. So Lucas and Coppola were these leftist filmmakers, so they very much knew how to appropriate Nazi imagery or racist imagery and turn that into a commentary on U.S. imperialism. Obviously during the Vietnam War. But the thing is, I guess to the question whether or not war is good for art, I know at this time Nazi Germany was still in peacetime. Like for every triumph of the will that you have, for every one of those like Nazi movies that you're like, oh, we got to separate the art from the artist because they had helicopter shots and the framing and the composition was, I mean, you have like dozens of movies that were just, like you have like I forget the Living Forest or the Eternal Jew or the Rothschild, like cheaply made like newsreels that obviously just perpetuate blood libel and were the impetus and what's it the casus belli? I don't know how to speak Latin, but for mobilizing the Nazis against these inferior second class non-human, well, I can't even say citizens because they didn't have rights, but that's so it's a weird question because it's one of those things. Is are movies good for war? I mean, if you're trying to mobilize a death machine, I guess yeah, it does work. Is it good for humanitarian reasons? No, probably not all the time. But by the same token, you have something like Battle of Algiers, which is a movie about Algerian independence, which paints the French in a bad light and actually shows guerrilla warfare and bombings in a more sympathetic light. Again, these are loaded questions, and I think it depends on who's in power and what it's aimed towards because like I said earlier, is I don't think there can be a 100% anti-war film, but I also don't think that any of these I don't think a pacifist film exists also,
Yeah, what would a pacifist film look like? Because probably just like a Richard Linklater film where people are just sitting and talking for 2 hours. Because yeah, you're missing the big set pieces that people go to the movies for.
Exactly. And I mean, like we could take something like Hacksaw Ridge, which was the movie about I forget the dude's Andrew Garfield was like the seven-day Adventist who refused to carry a gun and was just a medic. But even that, feeds into like the myth of like, okay, everything about everything about American World War II was 100% righteous and not morally gray or complicated. And so that still lionizes the mythos of America as world police and world liberator.
And wasn't it directed by Mel Gibson?
Yeah. I didn't want to bring that part up.
No, I think that's important because the fact that A, Mel Gibson still works, and B, neither of our screenplays have been produced yet shows that Jews don't control Hollywood. Like all the time, I'm like, if we did, I would be successful.
Yeah, well, again, Mel Gibson is also an interesting case because a lot of the war movies he has made, like something like Braveheart and Apocalypto, I guess, which is more about like the conquistadors, coming into Mesoamerica. Like he's framed his war movies like as a very like resistance oriented. Like obviously it's the Scottish fighting against the big English tyrants, and then you have the Mesoamerican, I forget if they were Mayan or Aztecs. It's been so long since I've seen Apocalypto, but fighting against Spanish imperialism. And in Hacksaw Ridge, you have oh well, this guy, yeah, he was still fighting the Nazis by healing both sides of the army, and he reached across, literally reached across the political aisle and trenches to save both sides. Mel Gibson is really interesting because he seems like he's not like a jingoist, but I again like trying to understand Mel Gibson. That's a fool's errand.
Yeah, a mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a. I for a second in my head, you were talking about Mel Gibson, but I was picturing Sean Penn. Did you see One Battle After Another yet?
I have.
Yeah, did you like that one? Because that's like may or may not be a leftist movie. Like, I got into a debate with my friend after, because immediately after the movie, you have that incredible Steely Dan needle drop where she's at the dojo and like the scenes of like driving the car. I'm like, that's so cool. But my friend, who's an immigration attorney and works on asylum cases, was this like, this is just Hollywood. Like, why are they making this movie if they're not speaking up about what's actually happening now? Like, she was really upset by it because she said, like, what are the politics of this movie? Like, the stakes are too high to be ambiguous.
Yeah, I mean, I think ostensibly it's a leftist revolutionary film, but again, like you said, like as far as I'm sure we can find Hollywood executives who are investing in ICE prisons, ICE detention centers, the owner of my Dodgers, which is also a very disgusting, bittersweet victory. But like I can only speak for One Battle After Another in how it relates to its original source material, Vineland, because as you know, I am very pretentious and I try to read every Pynchon novel I can. And the original Vineland was about the failure of the hippies and a lot of the '60s revolutionary movements kind of just fading into obscurity during the Reagan era, and that's why that movie feels so anachronistic and out of place because like Leo would have been doing all this stuff around 2000, around the time that you had the WTO sort of protest, and then also like again ICE wasn't created until after 9/11, so a lot of it just feels out of place. But I think again it goes into these larger narratives of how does revolution or how does progress continue, or like do old people still have some value, or do we relegate these tasks to the young with their novel ideas and stuff? So I think just on paper, yes, you could say it's a leftist movie. I'd say that's the politics. But again, is it an anti-war movie? Well, not necessarily, because it advocates revolution. And I mean, is civil war also not a form of war?
Yeah. Yeah, and that movie was interesting. Alex Garland's Civil War. I know you said Civil War, not a proper noun, but that was an interesting movie, and that it was like a war movie from the perspectives of photojournalists. And so, like, it really comes down to the spectacle, whether it's ethical to chase the spectacle. Did you see that one?
I, I've seen every movie ever
Yeah.
made. Uh, no, yeah, I know. I really like that one too. And again, I'm thinking of like The Killing Fields, another war movie where it's through the perspective of a journalist, or Salvador with the problematic James Woods about the Salvadoran Civil War, and about like you said, chasing the spectacle. And I don't I what I really liked about that movie was that I think whenever I talk to friends about the impending collapse of American society and the independent state of California, the independent Republic of California, that people, when you hear Civil War, people think it's going to be wanton bombings all across the United States and all these things where no, there'll be political free zones, and there'll be places where people will live about their lives, and we will be unburdened by war, and we'll be eating our pastries as thousands of civilians die. And so I don't know, I thought that was the most harrowing, kind of unnerving part of that movie. Like when they're passing that town where everything's just, fine and dandy, and they're like, "Oh, you don't care about the war?" Like, we don't even think about the war here. We're just selling trinkets to people who pass.
Yeah, yeah, very zone of interesty. I need to revisit that movie now that state national guards are in Illinois against the Illinois governor's will. Like, are there any movies that you can peg that you're like, oh shit, that predicted the future, in the same way that like we're all living in an episode of Veep and or 30 Rock now?
You know, I don't know. You know, it's hard to, you know, like I think the one book that I read that I think was pretty spot on was "It Can't Happen Here." I know, and I think that's a good companion piece to Philip Roth, "The Plot Against America." But you know, I think for so long we've, you know, as Americans, we've prided ourselves on being, you know, land of the free, home of the brave. Like, you know, we are the stalwarts of democracy and protecting that. And then as we have this rising, you know, Christo-fascist Christian nationalist movement taking over our government, we're kind of like, yeah, it was happening since, you know, the 70s and a little before that, but we were powerless. We did nothing, and we were all out of ideas,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So I had, oh, go on, sorry.
I was about to say, you're wearing a Talking Heads hat, so like it's if like people in the 70s didn't notice because they were busy rocking out to really good music.
Yeah, R.I.P. CBGB.
Yeah. Oh, right. You need at least if times are gonna be bad. Yeah, but maybe that's not connected. War is good for art, but in times of war, there might be good art because the people need to escape. Like I know you're a big brat head,
Yes.
or it does do Charlie fans? Is there a name like?
I know we affectionately refer to her as mommy.
Yeah,
Uh, I personally say XEX head.
that's
Um,
Charlie's
but I
Angels.
Yeah, oh yeah, Charlie's Angels. That's right. I forget. Charlie's Angels is one, but I reserve that for your fellow uh compatriot Aubrey's Angels.
No, yeah, I people are saying that like Toronto will never see joy or a championship until I kept for as long as they still hype up Drake. Like that's an example of a person benefiting from like a scarcity mindset. Like everyone's like, well, he's our only guy. Like we can't not celebrate our biggest pop star. And it's like the weekend is right there.
I think I'd take Justin Bieber over Drake. You know,
Yes. Yeah, Justin Bieber. I haven't listened to his new album, but people say it's good. That he has.
I also think Justin Bieber as more street cred than Drake. You know, because you know, like Justin Bieber, I remember the Bad Boy Bieber era. And I was like, yeah, Drake's just, you know, gambling and drinking and getting bad plastic surgery and talking to underage girls. Like, at least Justin Bieber's throwing fists and peeing in public places.
Oh yeah, that rules. And then what was the when he peed into the mop bucket? And then there was something. Am I making this up? But there was something about like a monkey. He had a pet monkey.
Yeah, like I know Johnny Depp had an issue with some dog in Australia, but celebrities always need to take their prized animals to places where you know it's detrimental to the biodiversity.
Yeah, when we're famous, we'll be sure to have the least. Yeah, a pet that isn't a biohazard.
Yeah, well, I personally I want the radioactive monkey to follow me around. So I don't know if I can co-sign on that, you know, but yeah, oh yeah, I so Drake sucks. I think if you take anything away from this episode is that Drake is not good and be Team Kendrick all the way.
Yes, I've said it before, but I don't like Drake, not in spite of being from Toronto, but because I'm from Toronto. Because I don't want any man forced upon me, let alone a creep like Drake. And you recently became a dad, which is very exciting. Has that has that changed the media you consume about World War II? Like now that you're a dad, do you have new thoughts on Winston Churchill? Did you become obsessed with World War II?
Well, I was prepping for fatherhood, so I was already obsessed with Churchill and World War II and then his post-war activities, like being the first one to test Agent Orange on Malaysians. Uh,
That
so
that was
go, I'm
Churchill.
sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's another loss for American exceptionalism. I thought that was your thing.
Yeah, no, we caught up, don't
Yeah.
worry. But it's 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 I will say so. I haven't seen. Well, I did watch some war films, and obviously that was devastating. And I'm like, I never want my child to go through anything like that, which obviously softened my heart even more. And so when you see footage of Palestinian children just being completely decimated by American funded weapons, like it was already a visceral reaction, but now there's this like indignation and fear when I see that because I'm like, again, these are war affects families. It just doesn't affect the soldiers. It just affect the actual combatants in uniforms. It completely uproots just your the quotidian you know ways of living. I not necessarily a war movie, but one I recently watched The Perfect Neighbor on Netflix,
What's that? I haven't
which
heard of it.
it's about another stand your ground law case in Florida. Like obviously the famous one before that, the infamous one, excuse me, before that being the Trayvon Martin shooting. And this is a similar case of some white neighbor complaining about a black lady and her children playing on a lot that she did not own, and she ends up shooting her. And it's a totally it's told through police cam footage, so there's very little narration through it. It just presents what happened in like I'm sure a raw, maybe slightly edited form. But when you see children crying over the loss of their mother or their parent, like now, especially with my 9 month old, I'm like, again, it makes me it only strengthens my convictions for trying to find a peace, or at least some sort of escape from war, from just because again, like sorry, I wish I wasn't so stammering so much, but again, it's just it's difficult to watch. And I think now as a parent, like my worst fear of losing my child, seeing that a thousandfold daily is it's hard. And hopefully we can find some resolutions and or try to combat the military industrial machine, whether it be in media or the actual war machine, and try to let people live their lives and give them all those inalienable rights that we claim to cherish and value so dear.
Yeah, I think about it all the time. And also, like, in addition, we are the Dodgers versus Toronto, reaching across the aisle, but also I'm a New York City. You're in Angelino, and I feel like living in multicultural, multi-ethnic cities is just it's just proof that it can work. Just y- uh, everyone can respect each other as long as they're not hurting each other, or as long as that fuck ass scary lady. Yeah, that's like people shouldn't have weapons.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a big fan of pluralism. I took a page out of your old Pierre Trudeau's playbook. I think I was trying to really hard to brandish my Canadian history or lack thereof. But like when you see something like Los Angeles, and like specifically, I live and I grew up in Long Beach. When you see these conversations about immigrants and refugees and seeking asylum. Like, Long Beach has the largest Cambodian population outside of Cambodia. And so when I grew growing up in West Side Long Beach, so many of my neighbors were Khmer, and I've seen these people assimilate, and like again, like so much of Long Beach's rich donut history. I believe I forget which I forget if it was the cronut or what one of those famous delicious pastries was made by a Cambodian donut owner here in Long Beach. And like look at what's more American than fried
Yeah.
pastries, you know, again, especially as someone who's Mexican American, and we can talk about the annexation of Mexican territories and stuff. Like when you have people talking about repatriation, which again has been done before in America's history, it's it's not the LA that I thought I grew up in. But as as I get older and I read more, I'm like, oh no, these bad actors and agents have always been here. But I'm just glad that the people are going out and resisting and protesting ICE and doing what they can to help their communities, because again, that's like Los Angeles or New York without different groups. Like that doesn't exist. That's never been the history.
No, that and also California was Mexico before it was America too. Yeah.
And for that Tongva land, I just got to do my land acknowledgement.
Yes. Yeah, that's it's a hack joke at this point, but it's so true that people are being like, imagine complaining about hearing Spanish in Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, San Francisco. The Yeah, Los Angeles without immigrants is just Beverly Hills. Or no, Beverly Hills has Persians.
Well, that's more Toronto. It's more Westwood.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's just the most boring, with all due respect to Cher Horowitz and Clueless. It's not an interesting place.
Yeah, and again, like we're talking about movies and war, and like you don't have Hollywood without Jewish immigrants, women directors, and like and minority actors. Like the one thing I always hate is when people are like, ah, Jews run Hollywood. Well, it's because they created it. Like again, like these were artists who were barred from so much like fine art, like opera and all these things. They're like, oh well, these talkies, these things coming out of France, and Edison's cranking them out. Maybe we should get involved. And then it just so happened that audiovisual media would be, the most important media of the 20th century. And it really upsets me that when immigrants build certain institutions, and then it just becomes a blatant excuse for anti-Semitism by bad faith actors, where it's like, as politically incorrect as it sounds, like I would much rather have Jews making movies than Christians making movies. Have you seen the bad movies they make?
Ooh, I know that they're out there, but I didn't even see The Passion of the Christ directed by Mel Gibson.
Well, that's because you're a heretic
Yeah.
and whatnot. Yeah, that came out like 2003. Yeah, I think I was like 11, and I went with my Catholic church group because it was mandatory viewings. I'm glad they were instilling the blatant anti-Semitism early on. Y-
It
go-
Does it go down hard on the Jews, not the Romans?
Well, I mean, Mel Gibson directed.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know. Yeah, that's one movie Hannah will not watch with me, and I'm like, okay, fair, I get it. But but yeah, I also like, again, this is more of a cultural war, so forgive me if I'm using the term war loosely. But I mentioned Christian nationalists and sort of the far right theocracy that's emerging, and the moves they're trying to do to consolidate power. But they've like, I knew shit was going to get crazy, like obviously during the Bush administration, when he appointed a bunch of judges from Liberty University. I was like, oh man, Jerry Falwell's dream is coming come true. But like they made this series called God's Not Dead, and I highly recommend it for anyone who's trying to understand the current culture war. It was a trilogy, but apparently I guess there's a fourth film that I haven't seen yet. But the God's Not Dead is basically a Christian student takes a philosophy class, and the professor's like, I'm an atheist, and you have to write God is dead to get like an A for the quarter or whatever. And so naturally the student proves that God is real, and everyone clapped, and that student was Albert Einstein.
Really?
Yeah, that's honestly the whole movie. I don't want to give much away, but it's honestly one of my favorite movies, because again, it's hard to do camp right
Yeah.
in our meta modern era, where everything has a wink and everything is tongue in cheek. But like when I see movies like this, and to see anyone having like complete faith and conviction in anything, is refreshing. Like I'm stuck in this existential void where I'm like, do I even trust my own thoughts? But these people are like, no, we got it covered. We'll give you the truth. And that's again, that to me is that the campiest thing the campiest thing you can do is claim that you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, do your move, RuPaul. Is God dead? Were there any movies that were part of your Jewish education? So you mentioned going to see Passion of the Christ with your church group, but then we're so grateful to have you now that you converted to Judaism as an adult. So that's like, hell yeah, got another one. Were there any like movies or just the Jewish history of cinema part of your experience?
No one has done more for the Jewish people since Moses than Adam
Yes.
Sandler. Uh, or Larry David as well. Yeah. Or even going back, the Marx Brothers. I was always a big fan of vaudeville, and I was like, "Well, you tell me I can be a part of this club that Groucho Marx doesn't want to be a member of? Hell yeah, sign me up." Um, I will say an anti-war movie that did inform a lot of my Jewish education beliefs was Waltz with Bashir. And I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's an Israeli film. It's an animated documentary, so it's so high concept and epic. But it's about it follows IDF soldiers dealing with PTSD after committing a massacre. And again, I can't pronounce the Palestinian village, so forgive me. But under the under Ariel Sharon's, there we go, military campaign. So that's one that I saw and I was like, oh wow, like I think war is not kosher. I think I mean it depends how Old Testament you want to get.
Hmm.
Luckily I I converted to Reform, so we're a little more chill. But you can find good cases for war in the Old Testament.
Yeah, I remember.
Or the Hebrew Bible. Sorry, I don't want in case my rabbis the Hebrew Bible. I'm sorry, I was pandering to the goyim, the Christians.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The prequels.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I don't know, man. This episode's left me very sad.
No. Okay. No. What are some cute baby anecdotes? Because, yeah, you have a 9-month-old. Children are our future. That's the one thing. My sister had a baby, which rules. Shout out to my sister and my nephew. Because, like, she is carrying the weight of the world by sharing baby pictures on the group chat. Like, it's all me and my dad being depressed about Israel. And then she sends, like, OOTD of the baby in a onesie. And I'm like, oh my God, my hero. Thank you.
Yeah, no, babies are pretty tight. They're personally I prefer toddlers. So babies are still kind of amorphous humanoids trying to figure out what they are. But my little guy just started initiating peekaboo, and so that to me during dinner time, he sits in his high chair, he covers himself with his bib, and then I say, "Where's Luca?" And then he just pulls down his bib and smiles. And so that's the thing that life sucks. It's hard, but again, I children are our motor, and hopefully the same love that I share for my child, hopefully that sort of compassion and understanding can be extended to all victims of war, and hopefully we can put an end to a lot of just the disgusting atrocities happening under our watch and our tax dollars.
Yeah. Amen. And oh, that's so sweet that like yeah, your 9-month-old does bits. Like it's a hereditary trait.
I know he's already funnier than me. That like Luca has made my wife laugh like in 9.5 months than I have in our 11 years of knowing each other.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Yeah, it's not a competition. Soon you'll be able to do a double act once he can start talking.
No, it very much is a competition. I like again, I can't, I can't. I'll probably never beat my son in basketball, but like if it comes to the yucks, I will fight him tooth and nail until I'm on my deathbed, and I'll keep a counter of all the times I've made Hannah laugh and all the friends laugh compared to Luca, because again, what's the point of being a parent if you can't like destroy your kids and the things they love.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to look forward to. He's going to come home one day and be like, I hate movies. What a.
Yeah, that's my don't even joke about that. That's my worst fear.
I-
But
Is there a movie that you're most excited to show him?
I'm honestly, and again, I think this is a great anti-war movie, one of the great political satires of all time. I really can't wait to show him Duck Soup.
Well, I've still never
So,
seen it because I was born into Judaism.
oh, it's the best Marx Brothers film, and again, that's Rufus T. Firefly, played by Groucho Marx, is just a malevolent tyrant who's incompetent and everything, and it's again, if you want to understand, again, if you want a good movie to understand Trump administration, watch Duck Soup. But that's the one I want to have my son be schooled and well versed in the three wise men of comedy, so obviously Groucho, Chico, and Harpo, and the occasional Zeppo are going to be just repeated watching back at home.
That's fun. I need to come over. So because yeah, I've never seen them. So I'll be there too. I'll watch before the baby's old enough, but I want to join the party.
Yeah, and also who can forget one more, the great dictator, Charlie Chaplin's magnum opus. One of the few movies made at a time that was critical of fascist regimes. And so that I want to start him with black and white stuff, and then he can get into the brain rot when he's a little older.
That's yeah. And then now it's so interesting that this generation, just speaking of black and white, they'll have The Wizard of Oz and Wicked out at the same time. Like, I wonder if they won't know the distinction between the original IP and the extended universe.
Yeah, no, we who's the author of Wizard of
L.
Oz?
Frank Baum, which, fun fact, that's why her name
Um,
is Elphaba, because it's like LFB, Elphaba.
that's why I come to you for musical theater
Yes.
trivia. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's more you want to talk about. I mean, I've had a blast, and I'm happy to talk more. I don't know. We've exhausted the wells of anti-war films.
Yeah, and it's a good hour. I try not to go full Rogan. Try to keep it like at an hour at the most. So where can people find you?
So all my social handles are at Greg Roque is lame. That's ROQUE Roque. And yeah, I mean, I'm not really doing too many shows because I'm tending to my child, my heir,
Yeah.
but I'm still still writing, and so there might be some cool developments coming up which I can't really share, but I just keep your eye out for this old little quad trying to make his Hollywood dreams come true.
Yes, I don't think we've talked about you being a quad yet. So just to explain, he can make the Greg Roque is lame joke.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not ableist. It's reclaiming, the ableist term. Yeah, so inclusivity and whatnot.
Exactly. So, yay, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording so you could tell me the exciting developments. But Greg Roque is lame. He said it, not me. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so glad to have you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening and or watching War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Please subscribe, rate and review, tell your dads. We'll see you next time.